Hi guys, welcome back. We're into our book, The Prince Warrior by Priscilla Schreier, and well into summer as well. I think some of you have gone away on holidays, and if not, I know that you've been out enjoying the sunshine, riding your bikes, and doing all the fun things that are part of summer, maybe not with your friends like you've done or with your family. And I know it looks different for most of us, but that's where the real adventure starts, isn't it? We get to find new things to do and recreate the old way of doing things. So we left off in our story with Levi and Brianna finally making it to Ahordius, and they had come through the water. Remember, that's how you have to go to the water. And Ahordius in Greek means the unseen, remember? So we're going to continue. We're going to start with chapter 7 here today, and it's called The Book. When Levi and Brianna returned to the main room of the cave, Evan and Xavier stared at them open-mouthed. "What's with that?" Evan said, pointing at Brianna's armor, which was similar to Boy's, but embedded with tiny sparkles so it glistened in the dim light of the cave. Even her belt and boots seemed iridescent. Like they'd been dipped in her signature lip gloss. "Armor isn't supposed to sparkle." "It's my armor," said Brianna, and put her hand on her hips. "It can be sparkly if it wants to." She was clearly delighted with her new accessories. "Just wish I had my lip gloss," she said under her breath. Levi's armor looked pretty much like the other boys'. The trip through the tunnels had been a trip. He wished he had had a skateboard with him. Ruwak didn't talk much, nor did he explain what the doors with the padlocks were for. Levi really wanted to know what was in those rooms. Brianna had been too preoccupied with her shiny armor to pay much attention. "It looks funny," muttered Evan. "You look funny too," Brianna sniffed. "Whoever saw a 6-year-old wearing armor?" "I'm almost 10, Evan shouted. "Whatever," Brianna flipped her hair impetuously. "Young warriors." Ruwak's thundering voice stopped their bickering. They turned to look at him, sensing a warning in the stillness of his hooded figure. Ruwak lifted one arm and pointed to something hovering in the air that hadn't been there a moment ago. It was a large scroll. He made a movement with his arm, and it rolled open, revealing the list of statements written one after another in a fancy script. There were some things you must remember in order to secure victory in Ahordius. He spoke each one aloud while the children read aloud on the scroll. Number 1, always enter the cave through the water. Number 2, always put on your armor immediately. Number 3, never leave anything in Ahordius. And number 4, never take anything back with you into your world. "So, we can't take this armor back with us?" Evan asked, with a chest-fallen look. He really wanted to show the armor off to his friends. Although it wasn't exactly fearsome, it did have some cool features. Ruwak's hood swiveled in Evan's direction. "Not right now, but in time. Be patient, young warrior." "Fine," Evan said with a sigh. "Can we get going now?" Ruwak didn't answer. Instead, he turned away from them and faced one of the long, dark corridors. Far in the distance, the kids could see a small speck of something golden hovering in midair. It was too far away to tell exactly what it was. Ruwak stretched both of his long arms towards the tunnel once again, and when he did, a strong beam of light burst straight out of the ceiling over the object, illuminating. It stood out against the backdrop of the darkened, dreamy cave walls. Ruwak drew in his arms as if he was pulling the object toward them. As he did, it began to move toward them at an impossible speed. "Watch out, it's going to crash," said Evan, diving behind a rock for safety. Levi instinctively grabbed hold of Brianna's arm and pulled her back from the oncoming object. She naturally had been moving toward it, wanting to get a better view. Oddly, it stopped suddenly in the center of the cave, still bathed in the golden light hovering just above the floor. The light above dimmed so that kids could actually see what it was. Their eyes widened. "A book? a big book sitting on a golden pedestal. It didn't look like any book the kids had ever seen before. It was a book they knew that, but it was luminous and pulsing faintly as if it had not quite been there at all. The golden cover was very plain. There was no title or image except the crest of a Hortius, but the crest itself was not stagnant. It rotated slowly, projecting out of the book like a 3D image. The kids stared in awe. "This is the book," Ruach said. "It was written by the source. It provides you with instructions which will help you stand against the enemy." "Who's the source?" asked Xavier. "The source of all things, all life, all truth, all wisdom. The book contains all you ever need to have victory in Hortius and on earth." Ruach reached one arm toward the book, and the children half expected it to move at lightning speed as it had before. Instead, the cover flipped open just like a normal book, except it made a noise like a musical note as it laid against the pedestal. A little spray of light lifted from the first page as if the sound itself was visible. Ruach made another quick move with his arm, and the pages of the book began to turn, fanning open, each page playing its own note. The notes harmonized into something like a song, filling the cave with a strange, vibrant music. Ruach raised his hand, and the pages stopped flipping, the music still trembling in the air faintly. The kids leaned in to get a closer look. The page Ruach had stopped on was filled with letters and words that didn't make sense, like a code mysteriously scrambled. Is that some new language?" Brianna asked. "This book is different from any other. It cannot simply be read. It must be revealed. You may not understand the revelation at first, but if you keep it close to you, you will soon see its meaning. Each instruction you receive from the book will be stored here." He pointed to the orb on Brianna's breastplate. The children all looked at their own breastplates and then back at Ruach. Now they were really confused. "Prince Xavier, step forward." Xavier took a tentative step towards the shining book, and without being told, he knelt. He wasn't sure why, he just thought he should. There was something about this moment that felt sacred. Ruach nodded his hooded head and touched the page of the book, and the cryptic message began to glow and shift, coming to life. Then the letters themselves lifted off the page and floated into the air above them. Before their eyes, the letters slowly began to move, dancing around and rearranging until they formed a whole phrase. "Follow the way of the armor. It will lead you down the right path." Xavier read the words over and over, wondering what they meant. The way of the armor. Then Ruach reached up and grabbed one of the letters, plucking it right out of the air. When he did, the rest of them trailed behind as if they were all connected. He gathered them together in his arms and tossed them towards Xavier. Xavier was too shocked to move as he watched each letter flow into the orb of his breastplate, accompanied by the same soft music that had filled the cave when the pages of the book had turned. The orb started to glow very faintly, an iridescent purple like the golden words were spinning right under the surface. Xavier took a breath as if breathing the words themselves into his lungs, feeling them take root, embedding into his very soul. It was strange and astounding, the most refreshing breath he had ever taken. "Whoa," he said softly. He glanced up at Evan, whose mouth dropped open. Although no words came out this time, Evan was completely speechless, like when he first saw Ruach in his bedroom. "Prince Evan?" Ruach said. Evan jumped and then moved slowly next to Xavier. He knelt as well, now in total reverence to this strange, wonderful book. Ruach turned the page of the book just as he had before. When the pages slowed, Evan's heart began to race in anticipation of what his instructions might be. The pages stopped turning, and Ruach pointed to the words he'd been planning for Evan since before time began. They too lifted off the pages and hovered in the air. Once again, the letters transformed to spell the true instructions. "Follow the paths of old, and you will find peace." "What's that mean?" Evan asked, his eyebrows furrowed. "The path of old." But Ruach didn't answer him. Instead, he grasped the words and flung them into Evan's orb, so it glowed, humming softly. Evan took in a deeper breath than he'd ever remembered, and he glanced at Xavier, who put his hand on Evan's shoulder, smiling faintly. "Prince Levi," Ruach said. He beckoned to Levi, who sauntered over to where the other boys were kneeling. But he didn't kneel. He shifted onto one leg uncomfortably. Ruach didn't seem to notice. He just made the pages turn again. They flipped rapidly until a new page appeared, the scrambled words straightening out and floating in the air. "The gate to destruction is wide, and the road that leads there is easy to follow." Levi's eyebrows scrunched together. He looked confused. The message sounded more like a warning than a friendly advice, not like Evan's and Xavier's. He watched as Ruach transferred the words to his own orb, seeing the glow like the others, hearing the music, and he was surprised by the full breath he had to take when the words came to him. Brianna stepped up next to him. She looked at the two kneeling boys and at Levi, and then shrugged and waited for Ruach to show her instructions. Ruach, without a word, flipped to a new page, the book, and revealed it to her. "My truth shall lead you to my house on the holy hill." Brianna smiled in satisfaction. "There is one more instruction for all of you to have," Ruach said. Once he had given the words to Brianna's orb, he touched another page, and the words appeared before them. "Guard your heart above all else, for it determines your path." Ruach did that, grabbing things again, and the words went into all four of their breastplates with a final musical chord. The orbs glowed a little brighter. "Now," Ruach said, "you will see your destinations as soon as you leave the cave. But be sure to follow the armor. It will guide you." "What is our destination?" Brianna asked. "Is it a house, like my instructions said? Like a castle, maybe, with unicorns? When we see it, you will know." "That's it?" Xavier frowned a little. It didn't seem like really enough information. No map? Or even a description of where we're headed? I mean, if we're supposed to be fighting a battle... Ruach's voice stopped Xavier cold. It boomed off the walls of the cave, making the rocks tremble, echoing into each kid's heart. "You have everything you need." The walls of the cave quivered, like when the picture on the TV starts cutting out. The kids looked around, startled, and when they turned back, Ruach had disappeared. Then the cave itself disappeared, like the TV had been shut off. It was all gone. The Way of the Armor, Part 2, Chapter 8, The Gate to Destruction. The kids found themselves in the middle of the sandstorm that they thought they had left behind for good. They stood with their backs together, their bodies tense. The sand cloud was so thick and the wind so fierce they couldn't see any light coming through. No hint of sky or sun. "Is it the Grobel again?" Brianna asked, covering her head in defense against the giant, horrible sand monster that had almost buried her before. "Hey," Levi said, looking at his hands in wonder, "there's no wind." He was right. Although the storm raged all around them, they couldn't feel any sand whipping their faces. It was like they were in a protective bubble or an invisible force field. "It's like we're in it, but we're really not in it," Evan said. His voice hushed. He went to the edge of the bubble and poked his finger into the barrier. It didn't tremble the way the ceiling of the cave had. It was solid, hard, and clear like glass, clearer than glass, actually. "Cool," whispered Xavier to himself. "So how are we supposed to get out of here?" Brianna asked. "Find this kingdom or whatever." As if in answer to her question, loud popping noises sounded all around them, each one announcing trouble. Cracks began to form in the bubble, small at first, but snaking outward into an intricate woven spider web. "This doesn't look good," said Evan. The kids huddled closer together as if preparing themselves for the inevitable. The bubble imploded, the storm filling all the space around him. The cracks continued to widen, the creaking noises more pronounced. "It's opening," said Brianna, backing away. "Yeah, but no sand is coming in," Xavier said. He strained forward for a better view, and the others followed his lead. It was true, the storm did not enter through the cracks. They're more like doorways. He was right. The cracks had began opening wide enough to see through. 3 gates appeared, a big one in the middle and 2 smaller ones on either side. The middle gate was an ornate gold, and with 2 of the outsides were plain rough wood. Over all 3 were engraved the words, "Lean not on your own understanding." Around each doorway, suspended in space, the sandstorm continued to blow, yet the 3 doorways opened to different worlds. The doorway to the left led to a dark, gloomy-looking street with old, crumbling buildings on either side. 2 street lamps in the foreground were lit, but the rest weren't. The pavement looked damp, like it was raining. The gate on the right was the only one that led right back into the raging sandstorm. The wide middle gate led to a pretty cobbled road lined with trees, flowers, which stretched over several hills. There were gardens and waterfalls and green mountains, and far into the distance, sitting on the cushion of clouds between the mountain peaks, was a magnificent, sprawling castle. The sky was clear, blue, but dotted with odd-shaped objects where clouds should have been. Although these things didn't look anything like clouds, they were more like big, floating, grayish, purple rocks. "The house on the hill," Brianna said, pointing. "Well, it's more like a house on a cloud than a hill, and that house is more like a castle. Isn't it beautiful? And that was in my instructions. I'm supposed to go that way." She lurched towards the middle gate. "Wait," Xavier said, reaching out to block her path. "We're supposed to follow the armor, remember? Follow the way of the armor, whatever that means." "How do we do that?" said Levi. Is it going to talk or something?" The kids looked at their breastplates as if waiting for them to speak. "So what's it saying?" Evan asked. "Can you hear anything?" Levi and Xavier shook their heads. "Well, I know I don't want to go that way," Brianna said, pointing to the darkened street to the left. "Looks kind of haunted. And I'm definitely not going back into that sand again, so there's only one choice." She inched towards the middle gate. "I agree with her," Evan said. "I mean, why should Ruach give us this armor and then send us right back into a storm, and there's 2 barely made it out of it?" He gestured toward Brianna and Levi. "So what are we waiting for?" asked Levi. "Let's go." Suddenly the orb on Levi's breastplate started spinning, and the words inside tumbled out so that he could see them hovering in the air before them. "The gate to destruction is wide, and the road that leads there is easy to follow." The kids read the instructions slowly, carefully, each of their eyes darting from the message to the options before them. Xavier pointed to the middle gate. "That looks pretty wide. I don't think we're supposed to go that way." "It doesn't make sense to choose either of those ways," Levi said. "Just look at them." Xavier looked. Levi was right. Both options looked pretty uninviting. He took a deep breath. "Lean not on your own understanding," he said. "It's written right above there, see?" "That's true," Brianna said thoughtfully. Just then the orb on her breastplate began to spin, glowing faintly. "Hey, look," said Evan. "Your armor is doing something." She looked down, straining to see, and then she looked back at Evan. "Yours is doing it too." They stared in astonishment as both orbs projected a beam of light into the space between them. Particles of light began to dance, twirling around each other until they reorganized into an image, the image of the dark city street that lay through the gate to the left. Then, suddenly, the image broke apart, the light retreating back into the orbs. "Whoa," Evan said softly. "I think it wants us to go that way," and he pointed to the left gate. "That way?" Brianna asked, making a face of horror. "That can't be right." She rapped on the breastplate a few times, hoping a new picture would appear, but it didn't. "I wonder if we're all supposed to go that way," Xavier said. "We probably should stay together." Just then, Xavier's orb did the same thing, projecting an object into the air in front of him, the gate with the storm. He looked back up at the gate to the right. It's telling me to go that way. His shoulders slumped in dismay. You too? He pointed to Levi. Indeed, Levi's armor was projecting the same image. What? No way, Levi shook his head. Not me. I'm not going back in there. But we have armor now, said Xavier. This armor? You think it's going to protect us from that? He looked around at the others, who only shrugged, betraying their own doubts about the armor. Levi shook his head. No way, I'm going this way. Catch you on the flip side. And he turned and headed for the middle gate. Brianna grabbed his arm. Levi, I don't think you should. Don't worry about me. I'll be at that fancy castle probably eating an ice cream sundae by the time you guys get there. Have fun. And he approached the gate carefully, took a deep breath, and glanced back at his friends one more time. Then he turned, straightened his shoulders, and he stepped over the threshold to the other side. It looked to the other kids as if he had passed through an invisible curtain. The scene of the cobbled road swallowed him up as he vanished through it. Evan rushed over to the middle gate, gazing at the empty scene in awe. He just disappeared. I hope he's going to be okay, Brianna said, clearly worried. Maybe Levi's right, Xavier said. Maybe we should just go with him. It does seem like the right way, and maybe we don't know what these pictures really mean. He stopped, his eyes suddenly drawn to the words over the storm gate. Lean not on your own understanding. Well, it didn't really make sense, but this was what this armor was telling him to do. He sighed. I guess I have to go that way. As soon as he said it out loud, he felt something open in himself, a new certainty arising. Yes, this is the right path. Then I guess I have to go through there, said Brianna, indicating the gateway to the old city street. It's so dark and wet and old. The old path, Xavier said suddenly, like a light bulb had come on in his head. Maybe that's what the instruction meant. Follow the old path. Paths of old, not old path, corrected Brianna. Same thing, Evan said. It said if I go down the old path, it'll be peaceful and something, right? It said you would find peace, said Brianna. Well, close enough. Evan marched toward the gate, then stopped and turned. The bright look of confidence on his face had faded already. So you coming or what? He said to Brianna. Well, I guess so, Brianna sighed deeply, throwing back her shoulders, preparing herself for the worst. Hey, said Xavier. Brianna turned to look at him. He was startled by the bigness of her eyes. They were dark brown, but sort of sparkling like the rest of her. He felt his face flush and hoped she didn't notice. Just watch out for my little brother, okay? I can watch out for myself, Evan said. With that, he spun around and plunged through the gate. It appeared that he, like Levi, had passed through the curtain and was gone. Don't worry, said Brianna, smiling at Xavier. I got this. And she gave him a thumbs up as she turned towards, taking another deep breath, and strode resolutely through the gate after Evan. She disappeared too. All alone now, Xavier looked down once more at the picture floating on his breastplate, just to be sure it hadn't changed. The storm. He looked again at the serene middle path that led straight to the castle in the cloud. Maybe I'm crazy, he said with a sigh. He walked up to the gate on the right, gazing out at the violent wind, the swirling sand so dense it looked like a thick fog, a dark fog. He straightened. He took 3 huge breaths, shut his eyes, then plunged through the gate into the storm. We're going to finish here today with them all heading off onto a new journey, and we'll have to come and see what happens to them next week. Hope you guys are taking care, reading your Bibles, praying, being kind to your brothers and sisters, and helping mom and dad out at home. And I hope that you find peace in your day and lots of fun things to do. We'll talk to you soon. Hopefully we'll see you at the doors with the crafts. And take care, guys.